I'm going to talk about local space. I discovered local space astrology in the early 1970s, and I popularized it through a series of articles over the next few years and then the next few decades. More than anything else, I programmed this technique and made local space available to astrologers all over the world. And today it's part of most major astrological software packages, and it's considered one of the main relocation techniques in modern astrology. And indeed, it's a wonderful technique. Here's a brief quote from my original article when, everything was absolutely fresh. Quote, "Here is no subtle plane, but rather a personal landscape painted in bold and clear strokes and tailor-made to fit the psyche of each individual. Here is a world where the modern man is learning to move across the face of this earth in kind of an endless dance of adjustment and tuning of his natal chart, of his radix, his self. Individuals driven in particular directions on like a checkerboard world, unable to resist traveling toward a goal that is no particular place on earth, so much as it's a direction imprinted within them, the direction of a force or planet. And, quote, there where power hovers, unquote, to use Don Juan's expression from Carlos Castaneda. So in a word, here is perhaps the most vulgar astrological system, where the obvious is enthroned and the subtle just not necessary. As the above quote suggests, relocation and the endless day-to-day adjustments of our living quarters, that go with it, may not just be the obvious move to this house, another house, or to another city, as much as it is a need to fulfill something deep within us. The pull of a planet, the pull of a force drawing us closer and closer, or an inner need and desire to know that force better, or to actually experience it more strongly. Getting away on a vacation, and having that unexpected rush of freedom and delight as we move for a day or two, or part of a day even, into almost another world. A world where we feel free to experience. And as we soak in some undefined quality we just can't seem to get enough of, and later, after the vacation, heading home almost in a swoon, some little part of our heart is just too tender to touch at those moments as we reluctantly, leave our vacation place. So my point is that places do have power, and local space is a study of the power of places over us and how to choose places that will fulfill us. The whole question of where should I live? As a counseling astrologer going on, I guess, 50 years or more of experience, perhaps the most frequent question that I'm asked, aside from relationship and marriage analysis, like when I sit down to do a reading, is where is a good place for me to live? Of course, the answer to that question depends on a number of factors, and it often involves one of several astrological relocation techniques. That there are better or worse locations for each of us, there can be little doubt. I think we all know that. Most of us know this from just our own life experience. We feel differently in different locations. Our winter vacation in Acapulco may have been glorious, or it could be an experience we hope to never repeat. So that's the power of places. And relocation, moving your whole family, yourself and your family, to a new home, perhaps even in a new city or a different part of the world. That concept's familiar to many of us. But there's another aspect of relocation astrology that's perhaps not so well understood. And that is this, and it's powerful, that we can achieve instantly by relocation what otherwise might only be achieved over a long period of time. So let me explain. Those of us who have studied astrology, we know that there are events waiting out there in our future, events that will affect us for better or for worse. Professional astrologers use astrological techniques like transits, progressions, to help pinpoint future events that will impact each of us. An example of this might be a major Saturn transit, or bringing your progressed sun to a conjunction with your natal Venus. These are coming events that are astrologically significant and that perhaps even now cast their shadows onto our present life. In other words, they're out there waiting until their time. Let's just take a hypothetical example. Suppose we're looking forward to a Venus event, something that will activate our sense of love or compassion, or our ability to feel and appraise things. Perhaps these qualities are absent in our life, or of such minor magnitude that we know that we need more of whatever they represent. Astrologically, we can look at our transits or our progressions. We can scan the future with these astrological techniques for Venus events that will impact us when the time comes. However, and this is the point, using relocation techniques, we can see that by moving to a particular city or even visiting, we can bring about a Venus experience at once, just by relocating to that location. And if we aren't able to relocate, we can at least travel there on vacation. We can bathe in whatever experience that location may provide for us. So in other words, we can achieve by a relocation in space what otherwise we might have to wait for in time. It might take a long time for a Saturn transit to come around so that we could have the same experience. It is this ability to more or less instantly gratify some deep inner need that makes relocation astrology so popular. We don't have to wait 5 or 50 years for an auspicious transit or a progressed aspect. Instead, we can examine our relocation possibilities now. We can act on them whenever we like. Perhaps best of all, we can take a one-day trip or even a longer vacation to various auspicious locations and get some sense of whether we like it there. We can see what happens to us in that locale, whether it's fun or an enhancement of what we have, or no fun, disappointing. Now, in astrology, there are many relocation techniques that have been used for a long time, but 3 stand out as the most popular today, and they are relocated angles and houses, and the second one is a technique popularized by a friend of mine, Jim Lewis, called astrocartography, and sometimes we just call it astrogeography, because I think he trademarked that name or something. Then there's the technique that I developed called local space astrology. It's less known, but of no less use, no less importance. Now, perhaps the oldest of these 3 methods, relocating your chart angles, your ascendant and midheaven, or your houses, the 12 houses, this involves relocating the natal chart angles and houses, and it's as simple as casting a chart for your birthday and time, but for another locality, a different place. Once this is done, you compare house placement in the relocation chart against your natal chart and see what changed. How is it going to be different there? The second relocation type, astrocartography or astrogeography, is a method that uses a standard geographic map to draw lines where the various heavenly bodies, the planets, the sun, and the moon, happen to be on one of the 4 angles, ascendant, descendant, above you, midheaven, or the IC. Both of these methods are explained in more detail later on in this series. And last but not least, there's local space astrology, which is the main topic of what I'm presenting here. And of course, I'm partial to local space technology, having invented the technique myself back in the early 1970s. But also, it's just more useful, in my opinion. And as I think I mentioned today, it is included in most major astrological software, although I'm no longer always cited as its founder. But that's life, right? Now, the beauty of local space astrology is its simplicity. For instance, just imagine that at your birth, your mother picked you up in her arms, or your father, and walked outside. As she sat in the soft evening light of summer with you in her arms, she could see the moon rising in the east, and the very last rays of the sun setting in the west, and Jupiter and Venus were shining brightly in the twilight, perhaps. This is what local space is all about. The directions of planets and the directions of cities as they appear from your birthplace. The sun, moon, Venus, and Jupiter, and all of the other non-visible planets, they're not only directions in the sky, but they are also directions here on Earth. In other words, a planet like Venus, hovering low on the horizon, let's say it's in the southeast, passes not only through whatever zodiac constellation it happens to be in, but also through any number of cities on the surface of the earth. A line or direction in heaven, therefore, is simultaneously a line and direction down here on earth. I mean, this is what local space is all about, noting that the lines that the planets trace in the heavens are also lines traced down here on Earth, lines that run across the Earth, passing through all kinds of cities and places. And in local space, we want to know which cities can be found along the line for each planet. For example, we each have a Venus line that runs all the way around the Earth. And this was the line and the direction that Venus was in at the moment of our birth. Whatever we could agree that Venus represents in astrology, things like love or caring or appraisal or compassion, they're going to be accented for us along our particular Venus line, just as it appeared at our birth. Traveling, relocating, or even receiving a letter or phone call or email from that direction is some kind of Venus activation to some degree. Whether that will be a good or bad experience for us is something we each must find out, by living for ourselves.